Welcome to Midnight Mule FPL. I'm Midnight Mule and this is the video for Game Week 14 for the 5% series. In this series we look at a small selection of popular players and I suggest which ones may be worth having, but in reality you can pick any of the most popular players and you'll probably do alright and finish in the top 5% globally, which means you'll do alright in your mini leagues. As always, we'll start by looking at how the players did in the previous week, which was Game Week 13. Then we'll discuss the players for Game Week 14. We'll start by looking at the goalkeepers. Sanchez 7, Sales 6. And the less important keepers did nothing. Regarding defenders, Gabriel 9, Virgil van Dijk 6. The less important defenders, Trent 8, Aina 8. And the least important defenders, Burn 4, and that's all. As for the midfielders, Saka 18, Palmer 14, Salah 13, Fernandes 9. So that's where the points are, but most managers have got 1, 2, 3, 4 of those midfielders. And then the slightly less important midfielders, Johnson 10, Gordon 5. And the least important midfielders, Luis Diaz 6. As for the forward, Wood 9, Jackson 6. And the lesser important forwards, Havertz 6, Vardy 5. We're now going to look at each of the 4 positions, the keepers, defenders, midfielders and forwards. And for each position, I'll be showing the players in order of how important they are. That is to say, if you don't have them, how much pain you're going to have if you don't own them. And this is based on what I think the ownerships are likely to be at the important ranks for this coming game week, because it's a very fluid situation. So at the moment, Sanchez has now become the most important keeper. And 3 of the next 4 fixtures are nice: Southampton, Brentford and Everton. They do have to go away to Spurs. And Chelsea and Spurs aren't best friends, but he's only 4.7, so he's all right. Raya is a better keeper, but he's 0.8 million more. But over the next several weeks, you would expect several clean sheets there. If you've got either of those keepers, just keep them. Don't switch them. That's absolutely fine. And if you're wild carding or you are going to make a keeper exchange, one of these 2 would be a good choice. And then Flecken only 4.5. But if you can stretch an extra point to Sanchez, it's worth doing. Fabianski, bench fodder, but he is very popular. And like this coming game week, he's got Leicester away. Some managers will play him. As things stand, I'll be playing him, but it's because I got no choice there. But he's bench fodder. Absolutely worth having as your second keeper. And if you need to play him, that's fine. And then Sal's at 4.7, but the fixtures aren't great coming up. And then for the less important keepers, I'd suggest you don't bother getting these, but if you've got them, that's all right. Henderson's all right. Pickford, personally, I do like Pickford, but Everton have been struggling a bit recently. And 3 of the next 4 are Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, so you probably don't want to be buying him. Martinez went off injured. At time recording, he's flagged. We don't know how he's going to be, but at 5 million, I think at the moment he's not worth having anyway. You may as well have Sanchez, who's cheaper. And then Ward represents any 4 million keeper that's not playing. He's just going to sit on your bench and he's saving money. On to the defenders. Gabriel's the most important defender to have. He is flagged, so he may not play. He did go off at half-time last game, but the game was over by then. They were winning 5-2. So looking online, people are kind of expecting him to play, but we don't know for sure. So if you've got him, obviously you'll be starting him. If you want to bring him in, you can, but you're slightly risking that he's not going to be playing. If we knew he was fit, then you should be having him. Aït-Nouri's nice and cheap, only 4.9, has some nice fixtures coming up. Really not much chance of a clean sheet, but there is a bit of a chance of an attacking return, and he's only 4.9. Pedro Porro 5.6. Because he got a good score a couple of weeks ago, he's shot up in popularity, which means he could hurt you if he does well. Personally, I wouldn't be bringing him in, but if you've got him, that's all right. And then Gvardiol didn't play last night, but he is popular. I suspect he's going to play at home against Forest. He's got a chance of attacking returns. Actually, after Haaland, he's the joint second highest scoring player for Man City in the Premier League this season. He's got 3 goals. So 6.2 million, quite popular. He will hurt you a bit if he does well and you don't own him. Whereas Gabriel will hurt you quite a lot if he does well and you don't own him. Then Virgil van Dijk, good solid player. Saliba, Defensively solid, not much chance of an attacking return though. And Mazraoui, he's only 4.7 million, and it looks like he's probably going to get to be playing with the new manager. Slightly less important defenders. Trent is a very good defender. I suspect more people in the coming weeks will be bringing him on because so many managers have dumped Haaland and continue to dump Haaland. People now have money, which means people can afford to get Trent. So if you've got Trent or you want to get Trent, he is a good buy. Aina, so Forest's upcoming fixtures aren't great. He doesn't have much attacking potential, but he does get sometimes bonus points if Forest win 1-0. So I wouldn't be buying him, but if you've got him, that's all right. Robinson's on the way down in popularity. He's only 4.7, a little bit of an attacking threat. Well, Face is just bench fodder. Lewis massively dropping in popularity. But if Man City ever turn it around and start keeping clean sheets, if he keeps playing the minutes he's playing, everyone's going to buy him. So if you've got him, you don't have to be desperate to get rid of him, but you can move him on if you want to. If you haven't got him, I'd say don't buy him. Mikalenko's bench fodder at 4.3. Greaves, I think he may be flagged, bench fodder at 4. And then the least important defenders that have been popular but aren't very popular at the moment. Burn at 4.4 million. They're playing Liverpool next, so not great. But after that, Brentford, Leicester, Ipswich may get something. Konza's next couple of fixtures are quite nice. 4-4. Vandenberg's just bench fodder, but it's good to free up some money because you want to spend it all in the midfield, really. Harwood Bellis, don't buy him because he's suspended, but again, he's normally just bench fodder. We're taking Anson out because he's injured. We don't know how long for. Taking Kanate out because he's injured for quite a long time. Van der Ven, don't buy him. He's injured, but he should be back soon. But if you've got him, unless you've got plenty of other things to do, you may want to move him on to get someone who's worth having. Regarding the midfielders, Salah, Palmer and Saka, because people are selling Haaland, a lot of engaged managers are able to get all three of these. It's not worth taking lots of hits to get these three in, but if you want to sell Haaland, even if it cost you a hit, maybe even two at a stretch if it made the rest of your team better, to get these three is probably worth it. On any given game week, you could expect at least one of these to get a good score. We don't know which one, but because they're all going to be very highly owned, if you don't own these three, there will be some game weeks where it's going to hurt you a fair bit. And then Mbeumo has been good, but in the last 4 games, he's been playing a slightly different position, and I think he's had 1 shot on goal. So don't buy Mbeumo. If you've got him, he's okay to have. Some managers are going to have to sell Mbeumo to get one of Salah, Palmer or Saka they've not got. You don't have to get those 3. It's just a popular move at the moment and kind of worth doing. So I'd say don't buy Mbeumo. You don't have to sell him. A lot of people are selling him though. And then Fernandes has been good the last 3 game weeks. 2 of the next 3 fixtures, away to Arsenal, away to Man City, which would normally look tough. Arsenal one will be tough, but as things stand, the Man City one probably won't be too tough and it'll be a lot of fun. So if you've got Fernandes, he's great. It may be you've got Fernandes and 2 of Salah, Palmer, Saka, and then it's a case of, is it worth selling Fernandes to get the one you haven't got? And possibly. Like if it was for not a hit, then you might want to do it. If it's for a hit, I'd say it's not worth doing. I wouldn't be buying Fernandes now because he's away to Arsenal. But if you've got him, because he's done well for you recently, you may want to hold on to him. And then Rodgers is still very popular because he's only 5.3. He does tend to play every game. Next 2 games are quite nice at home to Brentford and Southampton. And because he's 5.3, he allows you to have slightly better midfielders. So there'll be some managers that have Salah, Palmer, Saka and Mbeumo, Rodgers as their 5 midfielders. So these are the most important midfielders. If you've got these, great. If you can get all 3 of Salah, Palmer, Saka, great. If you can't get all 3, it's definitely worth trying to get at least 2 of those. And the slightly less important midfielders, Smith Rowe's dropping in popularity, but only 5.7. Johnson 6.7, so he's dropping quite a lot in popularity. And the truth is, the midfielders on the previous page, they're the ones that you want to be trying to get as much as possible. Semenyo does have, this week's not great, home to Spurs, but after that he's got Ipswich and West Ham. If you've got Semenyo, absolutely worth having. Personally, I wouldn't be bringing him in at the moment, but if you need to free up some funds, that's all right. Son is a very good player, but he's really not owned by many managers, so if he does well, he's not going to hurt you. But if you're swimming in cash and you want to have Son, he's a good player. I mean, if your midfield was Son and then Fernandes, Salah, Saka, Palmer, that would be an amazing midfield. But your attack would be incredibly cheap, as would your defence. Gordon, so Newcastle blowing hot and cold at the moment. You think, oh, they've turned a corner, they're going to be good now, and then they start being rubbish. And you think, oh, they're a rubbish team now, and then they start being good. But their home to Liverpool this week's not great. Then they got Brentford, Leicester, Ipswich, which may be all right. But for 7.2 million, there are more important midfielders to get at the moment. If you've got him, you don't have to sell him. If you've not got him, I'd say don't buy him. And then McNeil, massively getting dumped by people. So they have probably got a new manager coming in soon. We don't know that, but it's assumed that with the takeover that's happening, Sean Dyche is going to get sacked. McNeil is a very good player, possibly the most important player at Everton. All right for bench fodder maybe at 5.6, but don't go getting him in. And then the least important midfielders, Luis Diaz is a good player, but he's really not very highly owned, so he's not going to hurt you. Bowen is a good player. West Ham have got some nice fixtures coming up. If you've got him, great. He may get you some good points. But again, if you've not got him, there are probably other midfielders that may be wiser for you to get. Garnacho's a good player, but he didn't start last night, or rather yesterday afternoon. We don't know how he's going to fit into the team at the moment, so absolutely don't buy him. If you want to move him on because you've got him, that might be all right. He could easily be getting 1 or 2 points quite often as things stand at the moment. Winks, don't go buying him. He's bench fodder, but I think he's flagged at the moment. But if you've got him and he's just sitting on your bench, that's kind of all right. Dibbling, don't buy him. Well, I'm saying don't buy him. He's suspended. He's an absolutely brilliant player, possibly the best player at Saints. But because he's at Saints, he doesn't really get many points. But there will be a few weeks this season, assuming he stays fit, where I think he is going to get good scores. So if you have to have a midfielder bench fodder because that's the way your team is, Dibbling would actually be my first choice. Because on the odd chance he has to come in for you, he may do well that week. Regarding the forwards, Kuna is the most important forward at the moment, allowing for the fixtures, the likely scores, how many people own him. If you don't own him, how much he's going to hurt you. And Jackson is also important. He's massively gaining popularity. Away to Southampton this coming game week. The fixtures are quite nice for Chelsea. He's on 4 yellows, but he could go many, many weeks without picking up the 5th yellow because his yellows tend to be for dissent and not bad play. So he can easily just switch off the getting the yellow card side of his game. So they're the 2 most important strikers. João Pedro's nice and cheap at 5.8 and he's quite popular. So Forest, as I mentioned earlier, their fixtures coming up aren't so good. So a good number of managers are selling Wood. You absolutely don't need to sell Wood. You don't need to sell Mbeumo. But they are 2 players that people are looking to move on. So some people may be moving Wood to João Pedro, for example, to free up 0.8 million because they need that for somewhere else. But if you need to play Chris Wood, that's absolutely fine. They're away to Man City, but Man City have been shocking recently. If he scores, it's going to be from a penalty, probably at Man City, but he's all right. So Haaland's all the way down to 5th at the moment, and he's still plummeting. Massively expensive at 15 million. We've now reached the point where if he does well and you don't own him, it's really not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt your rank. So by selling Haaland, if you've still got him, you can distribute your funds to the midfield, get the important midfielders, and you'll do all right. So moving Haaland to Cunha, Jackson or Pedro, that would be absolutely fine. And then Welbeck, more expensive than João Pedro, far less owned, not worth buying. If you've got him, that's all right. You don't have to move him on, but I'd say don't go buying Welbeck now. Watkins is a good player. Villa do have some nice fixtures coming up. He may be quite high scoring, I think, the next couple of game weeks. Not worth buying, I'd say. And he's not going to hurt you if he does well because he's very lowly owned now. But if you wanted to do something a bit different, you could do a lot worse than get Watkins. And then the even less important forwards than Watkins, Solanke, don't buy him. He wasn't even in the squad because he was apparently ill. Don't know if he's going to be well enough for Bournemouth. If you've got him, you want to keep him, that's okay. But at time of recording, don't know if he's playing. Isak went off with a knock. At 8.5 million, I think if you've got him, you should sell him. And then if it turns out he's all right, you want to bring him back in a few weeks, okay. But that money could go a long way in the midfield. Or you could just swap him for Jackson. Havertz, quite a good player. I've got him as an okay player. He did score at the weekend. But he's so lowly owned. If he does well, he's not going to hurt you. You don't need to worry about him. If you had 7.9 to spare, you should buy Cunha or João Pedro. So don't go buying him. If you've got him, that's fine. He might get you some points. But I'd say don't go buying him. Vardy, 5.5. Nice and cheap. I think he's getting a return. I think he's got 6 returns in 13 games so far. So just under a return every other game. And he's got West Ham next, then Brighton, then Newcastle, then Wolves. He could get returns in any of those games. They've now got Van Nistelrooy as manager, who's going to be a very attacking manager. So at 5.5 million, he's a nice cheap midfielder. He might sometimes sit on your bench. He might sometimes play. But he's very lowly owned. So if he does well, he's not going to hurt you. Raul Jimenez, he's not going to hurt you now if he does well. But if you've got him, he is a good player. He's worth having. We're going to take Calvert-Lewin out now because he's so awful. He didn't even start the weekend. And then Cannon represents any 4.5 million forward who doesn't play. He's just going to sit on your bench. We're now going to look at the benching order, starting with the keepers. And this is just my suggestion. You just do whatever you like. But I think if you blindly follow these suggestions, you'll do all right. So the first keeper you see that you have, I suggest goes on your bench, which means you're playing your other keeper. So if you've got a 4 million keeper that doesn't even play, of course, he's on your bench. Then I'm suggesting Fabianski, even though he's away to Leicester. Leicester have got Van Nistelrooy. Leicester, I think, have scored in all but one game so far. So they've scored in 12 out of 13 games. So he's not going to keep a clean sheet. Obviously, he won't get attacking return. His only chance is if he saves a Vardy penalty. And Sale's away to Man City. Man City are awful, but they probably will score. Martinez might even be injured. But home to Brentford. Brentford do score, not so much away. And then Henderson, Pickford, Flecken, Raya and Sanchez. So if you've got Sanchez and Raya, and it's unlikely you've got those two, then I'd say definitely play Sanchez over Raya. So regarding the other players, the first player you see that you've got, I suggest is position 3 on your bench, the next one position 2, the last one position 1. So any 4.5 million forward that's not playing, of course, they're on your bench. Van der Ven is out injured. Harbour is suspended, Dibbling suspended, Winks is flagged. Then it'd Burn against Liverpool. Then it'd be Faris, Van der Berg, Aina, Greaves, Mikalenko, Mazraoui, Konza, Garnacho, McNeil, Robinson, Lewis, Smith Rowe, Rogers, Aït-Nouri, Pedro Porro, Vardy, Johnson, Gordon, Mbuemo, Semenyo, Saliba, and then Virgil van Dijk, Trent, Gvardiol and Gabriel. It's quite feasible. None of those are going to get clean sheets, but they all have attacking potential. Then Bowen, Solanke, Welbeck, Wood, Raul Jimenez, Isak, Luis Diaz, Fernandez, João Pedro, Cunha, Son and Havertz. And then there's 6 players I've not shown you, and they're the captaincy choices. So for captaincy, any of these midfielders are all right. Palmer, Salah, Saka. Any of those could get to wear the old Mule hat. I'm probably going to put it on Palmer this week, but I've not decided for sure. There's also 3 decent forwards if you've got that you could choose. That's Haaland, Jackson and Watkins. Any of these as your captain is fine. Any as your vice captain is fine. I'd suggest you don't choose Palmer and Jackson just in case the game is called off because of bad weather or an incident. And there's an Italian game, it was either yesterday or the day before, there was a medical emergency and the game got abandoned. So you don't want your captain and your vice captain at the same game. And then as for the background picture, I am actually really tired. So I thought I'd show a picture of a very tired kitten with a coffee. And I've got a coffee over here on the desk. So we've only just started December. I'm not tired because of the football. I am enjoying the football even though I'm not doing great myself. But yeah, I'm just tired. I need my coffee. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that made some sense, and I hope you have a nice time in Game Week 14. I think the series is going right. The people I'm watching that I know are following it, I know they're not in the top 5% at the moment, but the way the system works, over the season, just gradually move up. All right, I'll try and respond to any questions. Thanks. Bye.